over. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the April Diamond Valley Writers Guild meeting. A quick reminder, if you are on Zoom, please mute your microphones so that we can hear the speaker instead of everybody else opening up their soda pop or their sandwiches or whatever. I'd like to start this morning with Kevin. He's going to give us a little update on our website.
Oh, sure. Put me right on the spot.
Yep.
There hasn't really been a whole lot on the website. There's been a few new book announcements. I've done some changes to the past meetings. All of the videos have been updated to the YouTube channel, so you can actually watch them through YouTube or through the actual meeting pages themselves. And other than that, I'm still mostly just working on the Straight Jackets preservation project, which I hopefully will have done before the end of this month. So that's really all that's been going on the website.
Well, thank you, Kevin. You're doing an amazing job. Please, everybody, thank you, Kevin. One thing, if you are a paid member, you do have a profile on the website. So you should log in, update your profile, link your social media to it. You can link your author's website to it. Kevin has made it so interactive for the writing community. So go take a look. And if you have questions, you can reach out to Kevin directly through, I believe, what do they need to do to reach out to you on the website, Kevin?
On the website, you can actually just use the, you can actually just go to my page and say message user, or you can actually just email me directly through my email address, which is also linked on my profile page under the member profiles. So there's lots of ways to get a hold of me, and all of my social media or social feeds are there as well.
Thank you so much. Okay, an anthology update. The submissions are coming in. We're very excited about that. The readers haven't gotten them yet. That'll be happening after June 1st. Remember, the deadline for submitting your piece to the anthology is May 31st. For those that may not know, you do have to be a paid member in order to participate in the anthology, but that's easy to do. You can go to our website, click on join. It's $25 a year, plus there's lots and lots of other benefits. Maybe Lynette could pop those into the chat on Zoom regarding the things that you get for your $25 a year. The theme for the anthology is animals. And it can be wild or domestic, beloved pets, or rascally pests, even mythical creatures. The animal must be integral to the story or poem, not merely a cute, cuddly cameo, although they need not be the central character. They should inform or be essential to the plot or impact the main character in a meaningful way. Word count, 1,800 words, double space, 12 point, Times New Roman, the usual submission guidelines. That's all on the website. So you can find the information there. The important thing is that when you submit, you don't send it to the actual main Gmail account email. We have a special submission email, which is dvwgsubmissions@gmail.com. Again, all this is on the website. You can submit up to 2 poems and 2 prose at that 1,800 word limit per piece. And then it'll be sent off to our readers and our editors, and we're hoping to have it done by the end of the year, or maybe the very, very first of 2025. We want it to be good and look good, so we're not going to rush it, but we expect it to be out within the next year. And that's it. If you have any questions on that, you can email us. Shout outs, Lynette.
Well, if I can get my mic unmuted, can you hear me okay? I don't have much of a voice today. Shout out, we send out every month for the prior month. And usually have to have everything turned in by the 20th, which is today. So if you're a member, go ahead and send me your book blurb, definitely a link to buy your book, and a photo, a JPEG of the cover. And if you have an ongoing blog or other exciting news like a book launch, go ahead and send those to me too. You can send those to the Diamond Valley Writers Guild email address, and I'll get those. And those go out the 28th of every month.
Thank you, Lynette. She's our member at large director, and her job is to interface with the membership. So if you have any comments, kudos, or complaints, go ahead and talk to her, and then she'll make sure the board hears about it. She's also putting together a Kidlit critique and accountability group. You want to give us a few words on that, Lynette?
Yeah, we're really excited to support our authors who are writing Kidlit. We have our first meeting scheduled. We're going to try, at least for this year, to meet once a month, encourage each other. If we have pages, bring pages for critique and feedback. So our first meeting, and there's still time, will be May 13th at 4 p.m. These are all Pacific times because some of us, like me, are in another state. So, we're excited about supporting our authors, and we can't wait to get it started. If you're interested, just either put your name on the feedback form that we send out at the end of each meeting. Sorry. Or just drop a line to the Guild's email, and I'll get it.
Thank you, Lynette. Call for volunteers every week or every month. I stand up here and I say, if anyone can get here early that would like to try to plug in cables or set up mic stands, we need some help. We're down one person today because she had to work. So people do have lives, and we don't want to have the Zoom aspect go away or the hybrid aspect if we can't get enough people to volunteer. So if you live locally, within half an hour, 45 minutes of Hemet, and you would like to assist us in the morning, we get here at about 8:15, because the library doesn't usually open until 9, but they let us in a little early, and we could use the help. We might even buy you a donut. So, hey, it's such a great deal. If you have any interest in learning how to use this stuff, it'd be great for you to come down. Member successes. Does anybody on Zoom have a recent success, a book launch, something having been recently published? Maybe you won a contest. Maybe you submitted to a contest. Anybody out there? Go ahead and unmute. Got to be somebody. Nobody? Come on. Anybody in the room then? Anybody like to come up and tell about their successes? Come on, Greg. Actually, go right up to that microphone right there. Greg has something to share. He told me this morning, so I'm glad he raised his hand.
Well, it's not a real big deal or anything, but every once in a while I will actually read the email that I get from the Guild, and this last one that we got on the 5th, it talked about this contest that's called the Indie Author Project Contest. It's a 7th annual, and they were accepting submissions from the 1st of April to May 31st. And I guess this thing goes into all these people that will read these books that you submit to them. It has to be in a EPUB or a PDF file. You send it in to them, you fill out this form, you agree to some obscure legal document that allows them to basically underpay you for anything that you've ever done or will do in the future. But my interest in the past has always been primarily just solid books. I like books. I like bookstores. I like libraries. I like to hold it. I like to read it. I am so sick of staring at screens. My eyes go blurry after about 2.5, 3 hours. I work on a computer all the time anyhow, so to think about reading books on a tablet or something gives me nightmares. Anyhow, I submitted this book, which I wrote years ago, like 2018, to this contest. They let you know about November or something if anything comes of it. They actually offer dollar prizes for the ones that they have, sent to libraries, and libraries read them, and I guess they figure out if it's something they want to do. So anyhow, they're right now, it's in their hands, limited visibility in an EPUB format, and if you've never had to produce an EPUB format, it's a little tricky, but what the heck, go for it. That's what I did this last week or so.
Congratulations, Greg. That's wonderful. You'll need to let us know how that goes in the grand scheme of things. Okay, Dennis has something. Go ahead, Dennis.
We actually have a very loud lawn service outside. So
they do that every single month. This is their morning to blow directly outside the exterior door to the room we meet at the library every month.
I'll just say that I was fortunate. I had entered a contest at the Carolina Christian Writers Conference, and I ended up getting a certificate in the mail that said, first place, children's book, kudos award. And so that was a major accomplishment because now I'm an award-winning author. So I can say, and so that was from Marcus and the Emperor's Coin, and it's about a little boy who lives in ancient Rome, and it's a father-son tale where the boy ends up going to a mine where he gets the silver ore. He gets to go ahead and make a coin, which was called a denarius at that time, and then later on he sees Jesus hold up a coin and say, give to the emperor the things that are the emperor, and unto God the things that are God. So it's a chance for people who want to go ahead and share any kind of faith message with their audience, and it's especially children. Thank you so much, and have a great day, everybody.
Thank you, Dennis. Congratulations. That's fabulous. Congratulations on that. Any more announcements? Something anyone wants to say? Sam, didn't you have something to announce? Why don't you announce what's coming up at Inland California Writers Club this coming, what is it, next Saturday, right? Okay. Sam, who's president of the Writers Club, of the California Writers Club, is also a member here, and I'll be sending out his notice probably on Monday.
I'm president of the Inland Empire branch of the California Writers Club. That's one of 22 branches across the state of California. April 24th will be our 25th anniversary. We just published our Wild, Weird, Wonderful anthology. It's about 70,000 words, 286 pages of very excellent writing. It's priced phenomenally low at $10 because we want it to get out there. Actually, we're not looking to make money off of it. Next Saturday, we're having an open mic. It's National Poetry Month. I've invited people to read, and it doesn't have to be poetry. I've got 2 people that will be reading prose, and currently 7 that will be reading poetry. We're limited to 10 minutes. We have room for maybe 1 or 2 more people to read. And you don't have to be a member. We meet at the Ovid Family Library in Ontario. And our agreement with them is that we don't charge for admission, and the public can participate in our activities as if they were members. So, thank you.
Thank you, Sam. That's pretty much the same sort of arrangement we have here. That's great. Okay, anyone else in the room with an announcement? Anything on Zoom? Is there someone out there that wants to say something? Nobody?
Actually, Michelle, I'll kick in because I got to go to a pitch workshop this past month and practice pitching my adult fairy tale, and I got really, really good feedback. So that was exciting. That was the first time I've ever done a pitch. So, yeah.
Good for you. That's fabulous. By the way, I've read her story. It's a really, really good adult, not adult, but non-children, is that right? Fairy tale. It's targeted toward all of us, not someone who's 8 years old. It's really good. It's really good. Any other announcements on Zoom? Not seeing, it's the last chance. Hold your breath if you, okay, and we'll move on. Clay, you're out there, aren't you? I think you're there. I saw you. Okay,
I'm
great.
here.
And then I would hate to introduce you and then have crickets. So
probably when you introduce me, you're going to have crickets.
So we're gonna go on to our featured speaker for today's meeting. That's Clay Stafford. He's an American best-selling and award-winning author, poet, screenwriter, and playwright, film and television producer, director, showrunner, actor, book, film, and stage reviewer, as well as public speaker. He has sold nearly 4 million copies of his books and has had his work distributed in 16 languages. He is founder and CEO of the annual Killer Nashville International Writers Conference and a contributor to Writer's Digest magazine with his online column, Killer Writer. For more information, you can go to claystafford.com. Without any further ado, Clay, it's all yours. And when you're ready for questions, I'll facilitate that for you.
Okay. Let's have this as a discussion. And so at any point as we're walking through this, I would love to go ahead and have your questions as we go along, so that it's not just a boring lecture. We're actually having a conversation here. I want to thank all of you for showing up on a Saturday. I know there's probably a lot of other things that you could be doing, and so I'm very blessed and thankful that you guys are here for this. I run Killer Nashville International Writers Conference, and I see a lot of things, and the idea for this one is the art of storytelling, and it's basically, if we're going to sum it up, it's no formula. And I see a lot of writing now that's coming in that's very formulaic. And then I also get email after email that's unsolicited email. They just send it to my general account, where people have this brand new writing method that follows all sorts of various little things. Hey, Michelle, if you want to, if you don't mind coming back to the microphone, and we can kind of like have a conversation with everybody, if you're open to that.
Oh, certainly. I absolutely can. I also do have a mic back here as well.
Okay,
See,
so
I'm way back here.
take your mic with you then, and just stay seated. That's much more comfortable for you.
Either way.
But I'm not going to mention names, but there's been lately, I'm my own history. Back when I was getting my MFA, I was immersed in what was new at the time, which was Sid Field's story structure. It was a 3-act structure. It was in the premise itself. It was based on Socrates' beginning, middle, and an end. And we all know stories have beginnings, middles, and ends, right? But I became a adamant adherent to the story structure of Sid Field, and it made absolute sense to me until I started reading and exploring and becoming older and studying more literature, and then looking at some of the literature that's coming out. And some of this stuff, you guys may be using some of these formulas, but I want you to kind of think outside the box, because I read a lot of manuscripts, and I probably, in my job, I took the Evelyn Wood speed reading course, which if you haven't ever done that, I highly recommend that course. John Singenthaler, who worked with President Kennedy, suggested that course to me, and because he had so much that he had to read, and made a big difference in his life. And so I started reading it, and there are times when I've literally read 2 or 3 novels a day when I have an interview for someone. And it's a great skill to have. You do have comprehension. And so if you haven't ever checked that out, one of my favorites is the one that I took, which is Evelyn Wood's thing. And you can also get an audio cassette, an online training program for that. But I read probably, I say that to say that I read probably about 300 books per year just for pleasure. And that's not the ones that I have to read because I'm doing reviews or I'm having interviews with authors or anything. And so I have a wonderful opportunity to be able to read a lot. And I've noticed as I've gone along that there's a huge difference between what is becoming more and more formulaic writing and less creative writing. And so some of the principles that we're going to talk about here today, I'm just going to look at what I've noticed is, and I call them movements, you can call them acts, you can call them whatever you want, but as some of you know, I'm also a film composer and music composer, songwriter. And so I tend to, and my emphasis is on orchestration. And so I tend to have all of these various movements going on inside. So for me, in my concept, I call it movement. Now, I want to preface this to say that there are times when formula is necessary, and some of you may be in that situation. Some of the houses, especially like romance houses, have particular formulas that have to be followed because the readers who are reading that are expecting those kinds of things. And so in order to work with those houses, you have to follow those formulas, and that's just a given. And some of the tropes and stuff, that's just a given. But those are house rules, and I'm gonna differentiate between those and actual creative writing itself, which is some of the, we call, uh, you may have, like in my genres, you have thrillers and you have mysteries, and it makes me smile to see that sometimes things are called literary mysteries, literary thrillers. And so basically we're going to talk about the things that are going up on the next level, not necessarily the things that are going to be on the bestseller list, but the things that are like the National Book Award, the Pulitzer, all of those. What elements are contained in those so that you can be, and congratulations to the gentleman who won the award. Um, we're going to look at the ones that are critically acclaimed, which gives a work an opportunity to be able to live longer than just something that had placed on one of the regular charts. So, so there's a distinction between award-winning and best-selling. And I think part of that comes from the type of style of the thing that's in there. So if you're writing for a house right now that has specific style guidelines, I'm not actually addressing those issues there. Do we have any questions up to this point, Michelle, or anything?
I'm checking. Hold on.
Yeah, and I'd love to interact with you rather
Yeah,
than
actually,
just lecture.
We do have a question. Go ahead and come to the mic. Sorry.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, and I apologize.
You can go to the front podium.
I
if you want.
apologize that you have to do that, but thank you for you people who are there attending live.
Well, now, I had looked at your basic resume.
Yes. Okay.
And you now throwing in this monkey wrench about reading 300 books a year.
Yes.
On top of everything that I read that you're already doing.
Yes.
You must be about 20 years old to get all this stuff done with the kind of energy it takes to do this. I mean, are you on protein drinks or what's the deal?
And it's not necessarily the question that I was expecting, but but to answer your question, and be sure to tell me your name when you come up so we can talk directly. But I think there's a difference when you enjoy what you're doing. Yet I think all of you as writers know the wonderful experience it is to write, and the privilege that it is to write, and the joy it is to create. And when I still view, and my family views me, I'm still a 10-year-old in an older guy's body. And I do have the energy of a 10-year-old, but it's because I'm constantly playing. And so I'm doing the work that I love. And when you're doing the work with that you love, it's not really work at all. And I used to embarrass my mother all the time. She would say, she was like a proud mom, tell them what you've done, tell them what you worked. And I'm like, I've never had a real job. And, of course, mom goes, but this it's pretty much, I think, if you love what you're doing, then it's not work at all. And again, I will emphasize, really, for writers, reading is incredibly important, and I really do suggest there's some things that you want to read just to experience the language, and on that you're going to slow down. But for the majority of, especially popular fiction, you're going to be able to skim through quickly in speed reading and be able to read all of those things. But I have I can read in less than an hour just going through speed reading, and so I highly recommend that for you in terms of your own growth, because the more you experience, the more you read, the better off you are. And John Singenthaler had some great advice on that. Other questions?
Any more other questions in the room? How about on Zoom? Go ahead and unmute. See, you're doing such a good job, Clay. Nobody has a question.
Well, I love the interaction with everybody there. I love having a dialogue rather than looking.
Oh, we do have one in the room. Here she
Okay,
comes.
okay. I am going to while she's walking up, and tell me your name too, but I am going to talk about some structure stuff, because structure, beginning, middle, and end, is very important. But beyond that, I think that it becomes problematic and formulaic. Yes, let me have your question.
Good morning. My name is Angela Little. I was hoping you'd tell us more about your conference, when it is, where it is, what does it cost? Give us, if you wouldn't mind sharing more about that.
Oh, absolutely. But once again, that's not the question I expected. I do Killer Nashville International Writers Conference. We've been doing it since 2006, and it's focused on crime-related fiction and nonfiction that incorporates elements of mystery, thriller, suspense, action, adventure, and romance. So we cover like romantic suspense and stuff like that as well. We're not like a romance conference, because the through element is some sort of crime or some sort of misdemeanor that occurs, or some sort of mystery relating to somebody that has been done harm. We have, I think it's 4 days, and I think we have. Let me look up real quick, because I don't really carry this stuff around in my head, but this year, probably the same as last year, we had 179 authors and panelists, 153 presentations. We have capped at 400 attending authors, and we have wonderful, and I know Michelle was talking about people setting up for volunteers. We couldn't work without our volunteers. We have 352 volunteers worldwide last year, and that includes reading contest submissions, because we have the Claymore, which is for the first 50 pages of an unpublished manuscript at the time of submission. So someone can actually get it published after they submit it, but at the time of submission, it needs to be unpublished. And then we also have the Silver Falchion Awards, which are for the previous year. And both of those contests are open right now. So if you've got a manuscript that you want to be able to share with us, that's 50 words or less, the first 50 pages or less. We've had a lot of great success with that. We've every year agents now recognize the award, and we actually reach out to agents and try to help authors get agents. Some don't want agents; they want to go independent publishing. That's perfectly fine. But if they do want to go the traditional route, we help them get agents. And I think if you've really got something, to all of these contests and stuff, if there's a way that there's a publication other than the ends. Ours, we give an award, plus we give the opportunity for publication. We don't publish it, and we don't take any money or anything from it. We're just almost like an agent. We vet the manuscripts that come in, and then we send those out to various agents, and through that, we've had numerous people get publishing contracts and agents, but we've also had a couple of movie deals and stuff that have come from that as well. And I've worked in the film industry and the entertainment industry, so I have a lot of connections there that I'm able to, help get through past the gatekeepers to the people that actually make decisions and help people get there. We have live forensic presentations. Some of them can get pretty gruesome, but I usually say we have the alphabet of the law enforcement, the FBI, the TBI, CIA. It goes on, and we have people come in, and they do show lots of graphic videos. They show autopsies. They show all sorts of things. We have a crime scene that's actually on site. Dan Royce, the former assistant director of the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation, is putting on another crime scene this year, and so the person who wins that wins a really hefty prize. And so it's like a murder mystery game over the weekend that you can play. But we have a lot of different panels that go from people who are starting out with just an idea all the way through best-selling authors. And why would best-selling authors come? Well, one, they want to give back, and that's really the secret behind Killer Nashville, is that people are trying to give back, and that's why we keep it small at 400. But also, they're coming because we offer marketing, the latest marketing techniques and social media techniques, and new business contract negotiation sessions. And so it's a wide range. So no matter where you are and where, in the spectrum of whether you're a starting out person, a C-level writer, a B-level writer, or even an A-lister, there is something there for you. But we do cap it at 400, and this year we sell out every year, and we keep it small because we want to keep it intimate. One of the things I have that's been there since 2006 is when you show up, you have to be able to bring your business card and your contact information and be able to share that, be willing to share that, become a mentor to new writers who are coming along. So it's a sort of a huge, when I send out an email, it's to, I say to hello Killer Nashville family, because it's basically what it is. And it's people who've built relationships over the past almost 20 years we've been doing this. So hopefully that answers your question. You can find out more information at www.killernashville.com. And then also, I want to put in a little plug too. I've started doing blogs about my experience in the various industries and some of the pitfalls that I've been trying to save people from having on my site. So if you want to go to claystafford.com and sign up for my newsletter that comes out every week, I've got I call them success points, basically mistakes that I've made and why I hope that you don't make those same mistakes. And so the focus of all of that is I feel like I've done a lot of things, and I feel like I'm at the point where I'm wanting to give back, because a lot of people were very kind to me, and I felt like I blundered through life, but the people were always going, I think you got a little bit of talent, and they kind of lifted me up. And so that's what Killer Nashville and everything else I'm doing is all about. It's helping lift up authors, and we're all volunteers in this. I haven't been paid since 2006, since we started this. I've never taken any money from Killer Nashville. As a matter of fact, any kind of overload we have, we donate to libraries and other things. We helped build a library in Malawi, Africa, because we think it's very important that children be allowed to read, because in reading you expand your mind and you see possibilities that you didn't have before. And I think people operate best when they do have can see something beyond what their normal circumstance is. I grew up in an Appalachian situation. There was no reason I should have the life that I had, but I did, and it was because of other people. And so what we're doing with Killer Nashville is giving back. So when I approach people about coming to Killer Nashville, some of the more, accomplished authors, I tell them, along the way, people helped you. Now it's your turn to, if you feel that compassion, to help others. And that's what we're all about. So that's what Killer Nashville is. So any other questions before we move on?
Yeah, we have a couple questions in the chat on Zoom.
And then I want to get into the program, because I really want to talk about the art of storytelling too. So let's get those questions.
So Judy, did you want to unmute and go ahead and ask your question?
I like these question and answers though, because we do get to address what specifically is on your mind, and that's really what's important to me. Not so much what I have to say, but how I can maybe bounce ideas off with you.
Hi there, this is Judy. I was really curious about, what in the announcement it said basically there is no formula, sit down and write. And so that's what I want to know, like what, I don't know if it's writer's block, but finding the space to go from, I guess to get to the end of the writing, and because it's such a long haul to get through a project like a book. So that's what I'm really curious about is what, is how do you find the space if you don't use a formula to step through, or do you have exercises, or how does that work?
Yeah, I'd how I write and how I've talked. I mean, I've just done a couple of interviews with. Well, I just did one with Dean Koontz, and he and I tend to work on the same way. So I know I'm not isolated in my view on what I'm doing, but we do have points that we try to make sure that we cover. So there is a structure, as I said in the very beginning, there is a structure, but there's no formula. We are going to do a beginning, middle, and an end. But within that, there's a whole bunch of things, and that's what I'm going to get into when we start talking about the lecture. So, Judy, I appreciate that. Other
Okay,
questions?
and then we did have one more question with Cindy, but her mic isn't working, so I'll go ahead and read it. It
Okay.
says, every day I get invitations through email or phone text to sign up for some new AI group. I haven't invested a lot of time in investigating AI, although I know a lot of writers don't seem to like it. Are writers using AI to write their books? I would think
Yes.
it would be great for research, but what are your feelings about AI?
I am always the class optimist, and any kind of technology is always a wonderful thing if used properly. And that's the part that should be bold and italicized and underlined if used properly. I've experimented just because of Killer Nashville, and this was a big topic last year in discussion about AI, and I tried to get it to help me write this and help me write that, and it just does not work. The voice, your particular voice, maybe one day, but your particular voice cannot be matched, no matter what they're trying to tell you on the AI. Because I know how I write, and the stuff that was turning out did not sound at all like the words that I use. Because I'm a Southern boy from Tennessee, and I have a particular way of phrasing. We live in the land of Faulkner, and I have a particular way of phrasing things that AI just can't seem to get a handle on. And authors do use AI. As a matter of fact, the agents who are coming to Killer Nashville specify specifically that they will not accept any AI generated manuscripts. And my son, who's a college student, has shown me programs. It's kind of funny. There are AI writers, and then there are AI detectors. And so every paper he's turning in is run through an AI detector to see if it's been used, if AI has been consulted at all, in order to be able to eliminate any kind of plagiarism or kids that aren't doing, their work that they're supposed to be doing. And then, interestingly enough, on the other end of that, they have an AI scrambler, which tries to scramble the AI detection so that the AI detector cannot be able to find it, which the whole thing sounds kind of funny to me on a level. The best thing, though, is just to write. In terms of research and stuff, AI is great. You use AI all the time and probably don't think about it. When you're writing in Word, for example, as you're going along and you spell there the wrong way or use the wrong there for whichever the way the sentence is supposed to go with it, which is their possession, a bunch of people were there over there. You're going to get a little squiggly line under the word, and that's AI working as functionally as its best. And there's some great programs such as Grammarly out there that help you find things. But I caution you again on something which is like Grammarly, which is what I think is one of the better ones for some AI stuff, and it will generate copy for you if you want it to. But if you do get it, try it out and see the copy that's generated if it really sounds like your voice, because it doesn't at all. Plus, when the publishers, which they're doing more and more now, running them through the AI checker, will come up with something that's been generated. But even with Grammarly, for example, it'll ask you if you really want to choose this word, or do you want to choose another word or something like that. And most of the time for me, if I change the word, it's not in my voice. But there are times where I do say something stupid. And so I think in that case, the AI is serving as a role of a copy editor. And so when you turn your work into a copy editor, a lot of the extra work has been done, and you've made it a lot easier on the copy editor, but I wouldn't rely on AI. I wouldn't use it to help me write anything, but I would ask it to help if I've got my verb in the right case and stuff like that. Does that help answer your question?
I think so. She doesn't have a mic that works, but that was very helpful. I
Okay.
know that my daughter's an online tutor, and she tutors English for high school students, and they'll try to pass off AI generated essays. And she's like, no, and they're like, how can you tell? And she's like, well, tell me your research. Tell me what you know, how you put this together. And they can't because they didn't do the work.
Yeah, and it is detectable. I think, in my opinion, it's detectable by someone who's just an astute reader. But more and more publishers and especially academic presses, which are citing information and stuff, are using detectors to check AI. So I think there are gatekeepers in place that are. Once again, we're talking about formula writing, and AI has been programmed and responds very well. It's amazing. AI is absolutely amazing, but in used properly, it's a great tool. And like anything, used improperly, it's not the best choice.
Any other questions for Clay?
Okay, let me move into then. For me, as I said, I've got more of a musical type background, and for me, I make a lot of notes of sections where there's going to be high points and sections where there's going to be low points, and it's not formulaic. And in some of the things that I'm seeing, there's a really popular teaching method out there right now that says, and again, I'm saying no names, and if you're using it and having a wonderful experience with it, then that's perfectly great. But it's so easy to cite because some of these programs will say, for example, on page 10, make sure your theme is mentioned. On page 28, you're going to have a high point or a low point in order to do this or that on page whatever, and it continues forward. And with all of those, everything becomes so predictable. And I will tell you that I look at review books that end up on the New York Times bestseller list that follow this formula. But I will say that while they do sell books because the authors happen to have a brand name, it's not really great literature. And so what I want to talk about here is great literature. And so looking at it from a musical perspective, for me, there are basically 4 types of movements that take place within, and I really, I'd like you to keep an open mind and think about this. The movement A is going to correspond to Socrates' beginning. Everything, every story, every poem. You can apply this. I've used it in poetry. I've used it in writing personal essays. I've used it in writing. All sorts of fiction, from from short. I apologize, for short stories to novels to screenplays. But this is the formula that I use. I said the word formula, but it's the formula that I use, and it's basically you have the beginning, the middle, and an end, and within that beginning, and middle, and an end, you've got your A movement, and then in that middle area, you're going to have alternating around. You're going to have B movements and C movement, and then a D movement. And you're going to see every story that you read probably after we'd have this discussion is going to follow that. Even the formulaic ones, except what they do is put things in a particular finite position that almost to itself seems forced. And what I'd really like to see is more organic writing rather than thing. Now, is this a question of whether one makes an outline or one just sits in and writes? For me, I'm very detailed in terms of how I want things to escalate. Again, I'm a composer, so I want to make sure that everything escalates or de-escalates in the way that I want it to go. So I use these techniques the same way that I would do if I were going to write song lyrics, and you have, the A section and another A section, then a B section and a C section. So let's talk about the A section first, which is the very beginning. Already when you come into it, you're going to have some sort of excitement that's going on. And so these are the basically the, we'll just call them plot points or something, that the points that I jot down when I'm getting ready to write something. Am I an outliner? No, because the things that I write, I basically will change as I'm going along, because the characters, as they're moving along, new ideas will come to me. And so the trajectory of the thing. But what I like to say is, if I'm traveling from here to Los Angeles right now, I'm in Nashville. If I'm traveling from here to Los Angeles, there's multiple paths that I can go to get there. And those particular cities or those particular roadways that I'm going to go through are the ones that I'm going to make note of. Is there any formula to that? No, it's just going to be a pleasurable trip, and it depends on how long it's going to be. For example, if I'm going to write a novel, I may take a long meandering trip around the border of the U.S. to get to Los Angeles. Or if it's going to be a short story, I may even take a direct flight rather than drive. And so for me, I'm putting the high points or the markers that I need to find along the way. Again, are those going to change? Absolutely, they change, because new things reveal themselves to me as I go through. But I do think that those markers are important, because I have written things where I just sat down and started writing. And that's terrible for me, because I can churn out, 4,000 words very, very quickly, because I've been doing this a long time, and very decent words. But I decided one day I'll use this as an example. I had a great idea. I thought it was a great idea, and my agent thought it was a great idea for a short story. So I sat down to write this short story, which I thought was probably going to be about 5,000 words. It ended up, I think, 320 to 340,000 words when I got finished with it. So it was the world's longest short story, and the agent loved the story, but still at 320, 340,000 words, it couldn't be sold. So now I'm in the process of reworking that particular one. But that one was a stream of consciousness, and I looked at it and I did exactly the same thing. And I would compare it to like Stephen King's The Stand, if for any of you who have read that. It follows through this ABCD movement, but it will allow you to meander if you're not very careful. And that's why I try to make at least a tentative map of which way I'm going to go if I'm going to go from Nashville to Los Angeles. So you're going to enter, for the art of storytelling, you're going to enter this first movement with problems that are already there. And I really don't think that this should be a prelude. And I'm going to express a lot of bias in this, because this is just my personal opinion. You may have had excellent luck and excellent results with doing what you're doing, but just understand this is my personal opinion, and I am not one of those writers who say this is, or teachers or whatever, who say that this has to be a certain way in order for something to be done, because to me, there is no certain way that it has to be done. I love traditional literature as well as experimental literature, and traditional poetry, very form oriented, like a sonnet or a haiku or something. I'm very much into those, but I'm also interested in experimental poetry. And so what I'm saying here will apply to all of those, no matter what it is that you're wanting to do. So when you move into the A movement, it's the very start, it's the beginning, it's Socrates' beginning. A lot of times we are introduced to characters and we start to get to know the characters. Well, that's good, and that's exactly what we need, because we need characters that we care about. But when we introduce them immediately, there needs to be a problem going on already, because if you stop right now and take a snapshot of your life right now, I pretty much guarantee that everyone who's listening to this right now has something uneasy or unhappy or challenging or whatever on in your life right now, right this very minute. And the characters are no different from you. And I see so many, when I'm looking at a lot of the unpublished manuscripts, I see a lot of characters which are starting in, and we get to know their backstory, we get to know whatever. We don't know what the problem is going on right there. So for storytelling, when you enter into that first paragraph, there has to be that conflict that's already taking place. And this is a conflict that is going to sort of carry through, but doesn't necessarily have to be something that carries through. But it could be a conflict that causes them to go forward. You know, is it Frodo was his problem was he had a decent life there in in Hobbitville, and he decided that but he was living quite a structured and very bored life, and so there was his conflict as he was coming in. So you go through that, and you have an introduction, and I would not use a prelude, and I'll tell you why I wouldn't use a prelude. Most of the time I see preludes of violence or some sort of dramatic action with characters that I do not know at all. And so it means very little to me. And so really you read a prelude and then the story is not started until chapter 1. So I suggest you jump right into chapter 1 and skip the prelude. Preludes were popular for a while in the publishing industry. The preludes now are diminishing away. So if you've got a prelude in your work, really consider what you're doing right there and actually jump right into the story itself that's going to propel forward. So you're going to go through, and theme does not have to be placed on page 10. Sometimes my themes get placed on, page 398, because sometimes when you're writing theme you don't exactly know where the theme is coming from. That's in the rewrite. You go back and start incorporating the theme into it, and in the rewrite you go back and start incorporating the symbolism and things that can tie in thematically. And so you come to a point where something happens, and this is go back to the Sid Field thing, which is the inciting event. And I'm not going to invent new words for things that have been around a while, but an inciting event comes up and changes the trajectory and possibilities of things that are going on, so that the person can actively, from the inciting event to the end of that movement, is either going to look at it very excited or very worried or very unhappy or very sad. The inciting event could be a death. The inciting event could be acceptance to a college. The inciting event could be, anything that you want it to be that is going to change the character's life and take them out of the current world. So that's what I would recommend, rather than following particular plot points. And how long will that take to achieve that? It takes as long as it takes to achieve that. As long as something is interesting is going on, I really do not think you have to say, okay, that inciting event is going to have to take place on page 18 or whatever it happens to be. And I think all of us are always looking for some way, because writing, we're basically creating a universe, and there's so much that we've got going on all the time in the story, and we're trying to keep up with all these different characters' lives and everything. And it's a lot to have to carry in the mind, and that's why you just keep a piece of scratch paper beside you as you're writing, as you write this down, and you're juggling. And so we want to have some sort of systematic formula control, but that's not conducive to great creativity. So that is movement A, and that's going to happen one time, because that's going to be the beginning. And most of the other stuff that we're going to do is talk about the middle, and then one movement for the end, but that's the beginning itself. Let's talk about any questions you have on that.
Anybody with any questions? Go ahead and come to the center, Mike, if you have a question for Clay. Anyone on Zoom while we're waiting for in-room people? Okay, this is Greg.
This is Greg.
Hey, Greg.
How important is dialogue in the story that you're creating? Should take a back seat and more detail on the, surroundings, the plot or whatever, and the dialogue is just sort of thrown in there. He said, get out of the car, or, how important is dialogue in the overall?
I think dialogue is incredibly important because you're creating a relationship, and the way people speak, it reflects the way the people think. It's a good way to reveal character. It's a good way to cite things that you don't want to necessarily. For me, in a lot of, I might find myself writing some expository sentences, and then I think, that might be better translated into some sort of dialogue, or you go through and pepper as you're weaving, and that's another process that we'll talk about in just a minute. But you go through and pepper as you're weaving. For example, in backstory, a lot of it's I'd say, Fred. I remember when Fred left his wife or whatever, and rather than saying Fred left his wife, it's better expressed somehow in dialogue between characters who are talking, and it's revealed later on. And readers absolutely love those nuggets that come through dialogue. Dialogue is snappy. Dialogue moves things along rather quickly. You can get weighed down. There's something to be said for looking at a page. If you open up a page of some novels, you will see paragraph after paragraph, and it's a lot of black on white. There's something to be said for white space, and because it makes the pages turn faster, and the reader feels like the story psychologically feels like the story is moving faster. And I would also recommend shorter paragraphs. It will achieve the same end. And there's things back in the old days when we were working on regular typewriters, and I still do it when I'm doing on computers, is sometimes at the bottom of a page, I will intentionally, a page that I know that, say, a agent or an editor is going to be reading, I will, or, a studio reader, I will put something at the bottom of that is going to make them naturally have to turn that page. And I think sometimes snappy dialogue that goes through, especially you have dialogue and that means something. And characters don't always say what they mean or mean what they say. And I think some of that creates a great deal of interest. So I would highly recommend dialogue. And I will tell you something that Janet Ivanovich told me one time. She said, if you ever are behind on a book deadline, make sure your book has a lot of dialogue in it, because it's very fast to write. So you can, I would use dialogue whenever possible, because people love to eavesdrop on other people having conversations. And that's exactly what you're doing with dialogue. So I would use it as, I don't know. Sometimes I've seen it quite a bit. People start out with dialogue. The first line is a dialogue sentence, and then they have this dialogue. It's nice to know where you are and who these people are, and maybe what time period we're in, just to give a little bit of a context. But I wouldn't shy away from, after you create where we are and what we're doing and what the time frame is, jumping into a conversation, because it will create a snappy opening as you're moving forward. Does that help? Okay.
Greg said yes. We do have another question from Zoom. Marco, go ahead and unmute and ask your question.
Hey, Clay, just the beginning, you
Hi, Marco.
mentioned like incorporating themes and stuff. So my question was, when you start a new book or a new series, do you go in with some themes like okay, do you already have some themes you want to explore in that book right away, or do you discover those themes as you're writing that first draft?
I think that it's, Marco, that's an excellent question. And I think that it really, once again, it just depends upon the story, and it depends upon the writer. The thing that I would caution against when going in with any kind of theme is to use it as I've read lot of them, a lot of the manuscripts that come in for the contests we have, occasionally they'll send me a copy of something to look at. And you can tell right from the start that someone has got the theme, and the theme is taking priority over the story itself. And the story is really the most important, and the theme is something that you're not really telling the reader. The theme is something that they should feel or understand or get on their own without you coming across. Because if you're not careful, if you come in with a theme, it's like coming in with a hammer almost. Sometimes it can be pedantic, and sometimes you don't, unless you want to do that. But for me, I try to handle my themes very carefully, because we're living in really kind of, almost like we are. It's a divisive society to some degree, and I'm trying to reach as many readers as I can. So through the experience of the characters themselves, I hope to express some sort of theme or some sort of injustice or something that's going on, rather than coming straight forward with that theme. So that theme is really much in the background. So when they finish the book, the first thing I want them to think, or finish a story, is that it was a really good story. But then I want when they go to bed at night, I want their subconscious to be working on and come across with that theme. So you can start out with a theme. Absolutely. I've started out with a theme before, but I just caution you, if you start out with a theme, make sure the theme doesn't become the through line of the story. Make the theme the color almost, or the nuances that are taking place in there. And then a lot of times you'll write a story, and at the end of it, you'll go, okay, what's the theme of all this? And you may have to reflect some, but there's an underlying thing going on, because it's your subconscious. When you're writing, it's your subconscious that's going to bring out that theme of something that's bothering you. You're going to find a lot of wonderful symbolism that you've used, or some parallels or things that are going on for that theme. But I'd say, to answer your question, you can have a theme to start out with, which is great. You can discover a theme at the end, which is great. Just don't let the theme override the humanity of the characters or the plot itself. Does that help?
Yeah, that was great. Anybody else have any questions? Seeing no questions, Clay, it's back to you.
Let's go into movement 2, and I'm going to cite, for example, something that's going to be a serial thing, say the Lord of the Rings trilogy. And because you've got a beginning, a middle, and an end, and if you followed some of the formulaic stuff, for example, in a screenplay is 90 to 120 pages. So let's say it's going to be 120, just for easy math. For that one, they have, if you followed the Sid Field version, you would have 30 pages for the beginning, which we would call that the movement A, because it's the old world before they move into the new world. And then you'd have 60 pages in the middle, and then you would have 30 pages at the end, which would be the climax and all of that. And if you're doing something like the Lord of the Rings trilogy, you think about it, you would have a beginning where nothing really happens, that would go on for hundreds of pages, because the trilogy, I think, together is probably about around 900 pages. Somebody can correct me, but I'm just talking off the top of my head. So you do not want to have 150 to 200 pages of a beginning. Absolutely not. So a beginning can be, that A movement can be very short, or it can be longer, depending upon how much the action for what takes place is going to be from that inciting incident to the end of the movement A. And that, depending upon how much inner conflict and inner controversy that's going on, is going to denote how long it's in. And as long as it's interesting, how, somebody that's in a circus swallowing fire, how long should that show last? I don't know. I could sit and watch it for I don't know how long. So, it just depends on how long it takes. As long as you're keeping the audience alert. A friend of mine is now gone, speaker, Zig Ziglar, he said that he didn't. He was like the one-eyed discus thrower. He didn't. He wasn't very good at it, but he did keep the crowd alert. And so I'm saying the same thing applies here, that as long as you keep the crowd alert, that transition period can go for as long as you want it to go. So when you move into movement B, it's a new world. It's a brand new world. It's the person going off to college. It's the person after the funeral. It's the person after the divorce. It's the person after the child moves away from home. It's whatever is that new world. It could be getting off the plane for my brothers, getting off the plane in Vietnam. That could be the start of movement B, because it's a brand new world. Moving into a new house, brand new world. If you look at, for example, like I said, in the trilogy, you're going to see the hobbits going through various new worlds, and it's a lot of sequential things. So you could have a very simple novel or a very simple story that goes movement A, B, C, D, but you may have one that goes movement A and then movement B and movement B and movement B and movement B over and over as they're going into new worlds, especially when they're on road trips or something like that. And what you're going to do in that particular movement is to create some change of direction. And that's going to take for example, you're going to start, I'm trying to see left and right how you're going to see this. You're going to start here, and you're going to move either up or you're going to move either down in that particular movement itself. It's either going to get really good and great, or it's really going to start going downhill. And then if you have two movement Bs together, you may have one that goes up and then one that goes down, the second one. If you want to put a little asterisk there, like B, little upper script 1, B upper script 2. And that's what I do when I'm putting it out, to make sure that I feel like I've got that movement, because if it's just going along straight, it becomes very boring. You've got things that are going up and things that are going down. And so that's pretty much the extent of what movement B is. And sounds very simple, but it is, and it's not a straight trajectory either. It's this. But at the end, you're going to start here and you're going to end up here, or you're going to start here and you're going to end up down here. And then you can put as many of those together as you can in order to, you've got, for one of the short story things you guys were talking about, I think I heard 1,800 words. You're probably going to have only room for one B movement in there in order for that short amount. But if you're doing a longer version, or certainly something that's going to go 900 pages, you've got plenty of time to add multiple B movements with new worlds, and you got to make sure it's a new world each time you do it. It's not continuing in the same world. It is a new world. For example, the kid goes off to college. Okay, we've got a new world because it's empty nest. The kid, after 3 weeks of college, comes back home. Now it's actually a new world again. So we've got another B movement that's taking place in there. And we stream those together in these sequences of B movements before we get to the point where we're going to start our C movement. And then we'll go into the C movement in just a second. And the B movement, the final B movement, is going to end on something that is a very huge conflict that is not going to be easily surmounted. It's where things are going to start falling apart. So that's the end of the final B movement. All right, so any questions on that?
Anybody in the chat? Anybody on Zoom or in the room have any questions?
Michelle, is this helpful?
I think it's incredibly helpful. I've not heard this particular structure before, and I like it because I've read Sid Field, I've read Save the Cat, I've read bunches of stuff over the years. I also do screenwriting, so I understand that,
Yes,
90 to
absolutely.
120.
In your family.
The inciting incident by page 10, you've got to be, somewhere. And it is very confining. So I like what you're saying. I'm mentally applying it to my current work in progress and thinking, I've done that. I didn't know I was doing that. But yeah, you're right. Every time that there's a change in that new world, that new circumstance, you're starting it over again as a beat movement. That makes perfect sense. So I really appreciate it. Anyone have any comments or questions?
Yeah, and Michelle, you see, because you have the same vocabulary basically that I've got. You see that a lot of these formulaic things are really based in some excellent truth. It's just they get pedantic on how they need to be enforced, and that's really what it comes down to. It's enforced on things. So we're not really throwing out, the baby with the bathwater, because some of the concepts are really based on some truth. But I think they err when they start limiting the writer rather than helping the writer move forward creatively.
Well, and that's how it feels to me most of the time, is very constraining. If I try to apply wholesalely a particular formula or particular trainers or screenwriters or novelists' method, it feels so confining that it just grinds to a halt.
And Michelle, when you read stuff like that, or you see a movie like that, you really, you can see that formula is in place. And, if you're like me, you think, well, if they'd taken a little more time with this rather than trying to hit that particular beat on that particular page, I think that it would have been better.
Agreed. Anyone have anything they want to add or ask? No, we're freezing in this room, by the way, so we're all bundled up.
Well, at least the lawnmower's left, so that's a good.
The lawnmower's left. The library has no control over their air conditioning and heating system at the moment because it's undergoing renovation, and so we're sitting in here freezing. We've asked them to turn it off, and they can't. So that's why we're all sitting here like zombies. It's like, ugh. So we'll hang in there.
Okay.
Oh, we do have a question. No?
Okay.
Go up to the mic, or actually this one here in the center. Yeah.
Sorry.
It's okay.
You guys
get
your steps for the day. Maybe that'll help you warm up moving about.
Hi, this is Hap, and I'm really interested in knowing how you write your poetry. Do you start at the beginning? Do you start at the end? Do you give your subject a personality? Tell me a little bit about how you do that.
All of the above. Sometimes I start at the end and the same thing if I'm writing a short story or a screenplay or a novel. I may have a wonderful end in mind. I may have a wonderful little, and when I say wonderful, realize I'm saying I think it is. Insert that in there. I think it's a wonderful little thing to start the story. But I've actually used the method that I'm talking about here in writing poetry, in developing, because even if you're writing something that's a sonnet, you're going to start and go through that ABCD movements in the sonnet in exactly the same way. So I think it can be applied across the board. But where do you start? I think it just depends on where the idea, the germ of that idea comes, and then you start. I'm big on that. Michelle, help me. What is called where you make something here and circle it, and then you make little lines that come out, and then you write little bubbles.
Paradigm of some sort. Just a brain. Okay, Dennis said a spider diagram is what Dennis said. Does that sound right?
That I haven't heard that one, but that you guys get the idea. And so whenever I write anything, I do a lot of that, and a lot of those little bubbles get X'd out, but some of them actually lead to some other things. So in terms of putting things together, if I understand the question correctly, like what comes first, the chicken or the egg, I think yes, both. It just depends on what what the germ of what I think is, oh, this is really a neat idea. And, and I want to emphasize too, that when you get those ideas and go, oh, this is a really neat idea, they're not always really neat ideas, because I've done plenty of really stupid ideas that I thought were really neat ideas. So don't ever get married to one of your great ideas, because when somebody else reads it, they made us. You can. My poor wife, and I give her my stuff to read, and she won't even let me stay in the room because I sit and watch to see if she's laughing at the right place, or she'll like, okay, goodbye, go away now. And so then I'll get to hear notes later on. And I will tell you a funny story about that. And when you have somebody, we all need to have our first readers. And before you show it to anybody, show it to that trusted first reader, and somebody that you can be really honest with. And I found out that my wife is an excellent editor. And so she doesn't cut me any slack at all. And right after we had we'd been married for a while, maybe 6 months, 9 months, something like that, I gave her something to read, and she gave it back to me. And I said, well, as we always are, no matter how many books we may have sold, no matter how many languages or awards we've won, or where we were distributed, we always have that same little nervous thing of, but did you like it? Did you like it? Whenever anybody is going to read, and then never, absolutely never, ever goes away. I have a friend who's one of the, a name brand that all of you know, and he constantly is apprehensive about releasing something. So you find that trusted writer. And how do you know you're a trusted writer? My wife turned the manuscript back to me, and I said, well, how was it? She said, well, I don't think it was one of your best works. And I said, oh. And so I've learned, rather than to be defensive, because we all want to be defensive, I just let it go for that. And then I come back and say, okay, what do I need to do maybe to make it better? Do you think I should go rework this, rework that, rework, whatever it is that it was in that particular manuscript? And she said, I think I would just put that one in the trash can and start over. And at that point I thought, that's a harsh thing to say, but man, I can trust you, because not only are you going to say something good, you're also going to tell me this really stinks. And it was something that I thought was good, but after I went back and read it through her eyes, I saw it wasn't as good as I thought it was. I write a lot of stuff that's not any good. I write a lot, but I write a lot too that's not any good. And so give yourself permission, I'll say that, to always do that. Don't expect everything, that first thing that comes out. And I think it was Judy, let me go to that one. She had talked about the word writer's block. Let's just discuss that one really quick. Writer's block, in my opinion, is your attempt at perfection right from the very start. And I caution you against that in your first draft, because you're not going to have great perfection in that. And so I highly recommend that you just give yourself permission to write something really, really bad, and just take off and enjoy yourself while you're doing it, and you can fix it later on. But in terms of writer's block, I really think it's self-criticism. And do you need to eliminate that and just give yourself permission to say, this is just going to be, I do an analogy of doing creating a piece of pottery. It's not going to look like a perfect bowl, the first one you make. It's going to be warped. It's going to be leaning to one side. It's going to like the Tower of Pisa. It's just not going to be what you set out to do. And you may still be proud of it and put it on a shelf or something, but it's not going to be your most excellent work. And I would view that always as your first draft. Just jump in there and start doing that. Does that help?
It does. I have one quick thing to say on writer's block, because I think that we've all, quote unquote, suffered from it in one form or another, if other writers don't believe it exists. But a couple of years ago, I had a conversation with Michael Stackpole, who is a science fiction author, fantasy author. I don't know, some of you may know him. And he had a very interesting thing to say about that. And he said, that usually it's because you've taken a wrong turn. And if you go back about 3 chapters, you'll find where you took the wrong turn. And if you can fix that, then you can get past the writer's block. Is that pretty much what he said? I'm looking at someone else who was in on the same conversation with him after a conference, because all the good stuff always happens after the conference in either the networking session or the bar or whatever. And that was very valuable, because I've used that, and several other writers I know have now employed that. You go back 3 chapters, you start reading, you go, oh, there it is. That's why I took a wrong turn here, and everything from that point forward is crap. And then you got to go backwards and rework it and go a different direction, because usually, the other analogy is if you've gone up the wrong hill, so now you got to go back down and go up a different hill. It's sort of the same thing for me. We do have another question in the chat. Do you want that now?
Yes, please.
Okay, this one is from Cindy, and she said, do you see a trend in published fiction where books are becoming more lean and mean in delivery?
Depends upon the house, and I think that, and it depends upon some of the readers. I think literature, since the very beginning, has evolved, and it continues to evolve, and it will continue to evolve. And that this is an allusion to this, the white space that I was talking about. We live in an age where everything is coming at us in 20-second clips or 10-second clips, and you need to be able to turn the page quickly rather than looking at something that's lean and mean. For me, those types of books don't have the depth that really keeps my attention, and I think your average reader is actually looking for that depth. But they also are programmed, because of where we are, about how quickly they need to be able to turn the page. So I don't think there's anything where you have to have a very, very short book. I think, Patterson has been experimenting with some of that in some of his lines. But I don't think that your true bona fide readers are going to be able to continue with you for very long if you're not giving them a lot of substance in the story and you're actually just going straight through. I think those lean books that you're talking about are focused more on plot. This happens, this happens, this happens, and we get through it very quickly and we tell the whole story. What you're missing is the character development and all of the other conflicts that are taking place in there. And so I think that it just depends upon the kind of demographic you want to be. And I wouldn't even try to switch to one or the other. I would follow more my own voice. And I can't stress that enough, that rather than, it's almost like writing, what is the current trend, saying, at one time, just in the past, it was vampires. And so suddenly everybody decided they needed to write a vampire book. Well, if the trend looks like it's getting, lean and stuff, but that's not you, you don't fall for that. Stay with your voice, because you will find the audience that you need based upon your voice specifically. And some people just think lean and tell a really quick story. For example, in terms of showing versus telling, I read a new book from John Grisham. It moved along fast, and it was a lot of telling, and it was a very, he did an excellent job with it. But then follow that, I decided to revisit The Good Earth, which is an old classic, and I just felt myself immersed in those characters where I didn't get those characterization from Grisham that's moving along fast. Now, if you're going on a beach and need something really quick to read, and you just don't want to reflect too much, you just want to see something that's going on, then that quick, lean, mean is a great thing. If you want something that you're going to be reflecting on afterwards, then maybe something a little bit more meandrous is more in order. So, should you write one or the other? No, I think you should write the one that your voice and your mind is going towards, because, like following the trend of vampires, whether it's short or meandering. There's still long books being published, and there's some genres, it's like science fiction, fantasy, that are very, very long, and people want that meat, in it, and that substance in it. And so I just really, rather than chasing any kind of trend, and some houses, I said, are going shorter, and some of them aren't. Some are still going. There's houses that are more literary, but you just follow your own voice and do what you need to do. Does that help, Michelle?
I think so. Do we have nods in the room? Is that helpful? Okay, I'm getting nods in the room. So yes.
Good. Okay, so let's move into movement C, which is where basically everything falls apart. And this is going to start, your last movement B has either gone up and here, or it's gone down to here. When you move into the movement C, if you've gone up to here, you're going to start down, because the end point, the movement C is always going to end down at the very bottom. And you're going to use the entire movement C. If you went up in movement A, you're going to go down in movement C. If you went down in your last movement B, you're going to go farther down in your movement C. The whole idea in movement C is to have the character in movement B be identifiable, and the reader to feel compassionate towards your characters. So in movement C, you are going to basically strip them of everything that they've got. And the farther you can take them down into, their own personal hell, whatever that is, the better. And the idea is to be able to get to that very bottom, where everything is, I think, trying to remember, Forrester or somebody said it's the all is lost moment. And it's the very bottom of the bucket, where Job is at the end of his trials, and everything that he has been taken away from him. So that is movement C. It's very simple. It's wherever you ended in the last movement B, you take it all the way down. You run out of both of these things. You run out of time, and you run out of options, and you take away everything that the person has, the main character. If you have multiple characters in the story, then you basically are doing the same thing with them, but you are going at the very end to strip them down to the end of that one. All right. So any questions on movement C? And you're only going to use it one time, because you're only going to take them down to losing everything that they've possibly got one time during the story.
Would that be equated to the darkest moment in the writer's journeys? Do you ever read Writer's Journey by Christopher? What's his last name?
Read that. Yeah, you can. That would be
darkest moment. Is that what you're talking about, pretty much?
Darkest moment. It's been. I've seen it. I've seen it mentioned in numerous textbooks, and numerous how-to books. But yes, it is the darkest moment, whatever you want to call it. Any questions on that? And the important thing is you just completely strip the character of everything that they have. But it's very important that you've created, through either one or more of those movement Bs, an affinity for that character. So when you do strip everything away, then the reader cares, and that's what it comes down to. And you truly, in a really well written thing, the spouse is leaving and is not coming back. The person has died. Sometimes, you'll find that if somebody's following some sort of paradigm program, that's where the guardian is going to die, and the person is going to be left alone, Gandalf, you shall not pass, and then Gandalf ends up dying, and Frodo is left alone. That's the point where the hero is either going to have to make a choice. We're going to go into oblivion. We're going to go into death. We're going to lose everything, or we're going to fight back, and the fighting back is going to come from the movement D. Questions?
I don't see any.
Okay, so now movement D is very simple. It's basically you're at the bottom, and there's going to be a revelation, and if you've done it well, you've planted the resource and the strength in that character in order to be able to push them forward. And they're going to start fighting back, and however fighting back that is, whether it's Kramer versus Kramer about getting a child, what's best for the child, whether it's something where Ridley in Alien finally decides, this thing is she's not going to fool with it anymore. She's going to fight back. At all of those points, like Ridley, for example, is stripped of crew and technology and everything else. The alien is taking over the ship, and there's no hope for her or her cat. And so she suddenly decides, this inner strength comes into her, and we've built that inner strength. We know that inner strength is there through our movements, even in A and B as well. So it's not a surprise. There's a lot of foreshadowing involved in that moment, but the character decides, I am not going down. Or in one movie, I can't remember the name of the movie, I am not going to die today. There is a forward movement and a build that you go back towards the nemesis, and you're going to win. And again, in movement D, it's not going to be a trajectory of here and I'm going to win, or in some things they don't win. They start here and they go up, and then they fail at the end. And usually that's not the most satisfying end of a story for most people who are viewers or readers. But again, when you're at the bottom, remember, at the start of D, and you're going to work your way up, but it's not going to be an easy way. There's going to be fears that are going to take place, and they can drop as much as it can, but in the end, Bruce Willis in Die Hard is going to end up saving the day, even though he has been stripped and is injured and stripped of all his strength and everything and resources, and has been injured. We know that he is a clever guy, and he finds his way to be able to save his wife and the other people that are in that building. So that ends up producing the climax. Climax is where they win, or they unfortunately lose, but I do recommend that they win. But sometimes I've written stories where it's just wrong if they do win. It was just they're not able to get to. There's no coming back, even though they fought, and you leave, and you're left with those particular stories with a feeling of they didn't give up. They fought until the very end, but the forces were too great. Braveheart, for example, he dies at the end. Then you have that climax, which is either high or low, and then the resolution at the end. Once again, like the prelude, I would caution you against the resolution, because once it's over, it's over. So once you hit that climax, I think you leave them with that in there. And if you feel a need, all the loose ends need to be wrapped up, and that's usually where people put the resolution at the end. If at all possible, take that information and put it back into the story, and maybe resolve it somewhere. Some of these subplots within the structure of the D movement, or even the C movement, so that you don't have that resolution. If you feel you have a resolution, just think through and say, can I move this somewhere else? Because you want to leave the reader or viewer with that final punch, and then black credits roll. And so that's just a little advice on my part. Questions?
Anybody on Zoom have any questions for Clay? We have one in the room. Go ahead, Dennis.
This is Dennis, and I think at one point you thought you would add information about, at one point in the information, you said that you would add a little bit about different awards that are there. But I want to say that once you fade to black, I was moving on to the next topic, but I love the ending. I love the material that you provided. It's excellent.
Oh, thank you. Now, in terms of
Oh, we do have one question. It just popped into the chat from
okay.
Carolyn. Can you unmute Carolyn?
If I'm correct, Michelle, if I'm looking at the clock, like we have 7 minutes left, correct?
No, we just have to sign out by 11:30. So, you could probably go even till 20 after and we should be fine.
I'm just trying to be cognizant of time.
We probably have about, 10 to 15 tops. But Carolyn, do you want to take the question from Carolyn?
Oh, yes. So I read once that dialogue should always be conflict. That kind of shocked me. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, and I'll tell you where you lost me. You said dialogue should always be conflict. What is the one word that's the problematic word?
Always.
Should. Yeah.
Oh, should.
Should. It should. Always should. I would be very careful of anything, even the things that I'm saying here today. I would be very careful of anything that sounds like an all or should kind of comment, because I think that as a writer, that's putting a limit on you. And there's been some wonderful dialogue that I have read that's just when Harry met Sally, there's a lot of conflict in dialogue, but there's also a lot of just funny stuff that goes on in the dialogue that has nothing to do with conflict. It's you look at some Woody Allen movies. There's sometimes he's just observing, and there's a lot in that has nothing to do with conflict. So I think sometimes you can use dialogue as a break. You have something going on. Let's go back to Bruce Willis in the movie where he's Die Hard, where he's saving his wife and the family that's in there. Sometimes he has dialogue in there that's not conflict. It's informational. It's sharing something about their relationship. It's giving some backstory. So no, I don't think it should all be about conflict at all.
Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you very much.
Yeah,
that was very helpful.
So the what you should do is you should write like yourself. You should write the story that you want to write, and you should not listen to all the other shoulds that come from exterior sources. Any other questions?
I don't see any in the room. Any on Zoom?
Okay, let me, what we have just talked about here is plot, haven't we? We haven't discussed character at all. And I want to step into character for a moment, because I think at the end of it, we all remember the character more than the plot. Plot is fun when we're sitting on the beach, reading something really quickly, but the things we remember afterwards are certain characters. Rebecca, Daphne du Maurier's thing, Scarlet, Gone with the Wind, Rhett, Gone with the Wind. Those stand out, and you can't really remember exactly what happened in the story itself, but you do remember those particular characters. And so Alice in Alice in Wonderland, you remember those characters. And so let's talk about character for the next 5 minutes or so that we have left. I'd like you to look at each of your characters, and I really think this comes from being an actor, and like there's no small roles. Every character is important. I'd like you to look at those A, B, C, and D movements, and I'd like you to make a list of all your characters. I'm not talking about your main characters. I'm talking about all of your characters, and I do this. I have a lot of notes spread out and a lot of notes on my notes program on my iPad. I have a lot of notes that I put on my computer programs like Word and stuff. And you've got to stay very organized in order to do all of this. But as things come to you, your characters, each one of them is going to go through the same progression that we talked about in plot. Now, there's some music that I listen to that is I would say very simple and repetitive. And I think if you get into just having something that's plot directed, it's simple and repetitive. There are other things, even pop music, there's some excellent people. My son was introducing me to some new people last night as we were taking a drive, and things that they're listening to right now. And I'm just so glad that this music also is still popular with college students. But there's orchestration and variation and counterpoint and nuance that are taking place inside of those compositions that sometimes you don't get in the more simpler versions. So in order to create a memorable, I think, piece of literature, you are going to have that counterpoint and those transitions and those harmonies and those disharmonies that are taking place within the story itself. And those come from the characters. So each one of your characters is going to have probably a movement A, B, C, and D. Probably not more than one. They're going to start with somewhere, but each one of those characters is going to start with a conflict. They're going to go to the B movement where they've entered into some sort of new world or new relationship or new situation. They are then going to a point where everything is not going to be working out the way they want it to work out. And then they're going to hit some sort of bottom, and it doesn't have to be the bottom, but for them in their character arc, it's going to be some sort of bottom. And then they are going to either rise or they're not going to be able to overcome at the very end. And some of those characters, a heroic death in the process for the main character's climax is going to be what they're going to end up getting. So I would encourage you, even for walk-on characters, such as the person who is bringing a drink to the table, maybe bringing a waitress is bringing water to the table. She came from somewhere. She either is in love with the cook, or she got angry with the cook, or she had another customer that was just a real jerk, or she had another customer who was just great. But already they're entering the scene with something that is taking place already. And this is parallel to what we've already discussed in terms of plot. Then they come into the situation, and there's going to be some sort of little turning point that takes place. And then there's going to be a dealing with that, whatever that happens to be. And that comes from the interrelationship with the other characters that are going on, not necessarily the plot itself, but the interrelationship of the characters themselves. And then you're going to follow through. And usually you've only got time for A, B, C, D. If you've got time for A, B, C, D, you may just have A and B, or an A jump immediately to D, or something like that. But I encourage you for each one of your characters to put that in. And then look at the relationships. And I'm just going to go across the board right now. You've got the way I'm looking, I've got Clay here, then Marco, then Kevin, and then Lynette. So I look at character relationships and I go, okay, Clay's relationship with Marco is going to follow this pattern. And Clay's relationship with Kevin is going to follow this pattern. And Clay's relationship with Lynette is going to follow this pattern. And then I've got two things running. I've got my own story. I've got Marco's story. I've got Kevin's story and Lynette's story going on. But not only that, I have 1, 2, 3, and then 4, 5, 6. I have 6 relationship stories because you got Clay and Marco, Clay and Kevin, Clay and Lynette, Marco and Kevin, Marco and Lynette, and then Kevin and Lynette, and that comes out to be 6. So you've got all of those, and you start putting those together, and you create basically a symphonic flow with the story itself, and that is going to elevate it between just quick, fast pop fiction to something that is actually in-depth literature. And so we're not going to have a whole lot of time here to talk about developing characters, but putting all those together at those points, because your main thing is the plot. That's the spine of the story, your plot. All this other stuff, and I wish I had some way, and I've always thought I should be able to do this, and then kind of put them over the top of each other so everybody can see all the movements and the counterpoints that are taking place inside there. But in the best written works, you're going to experience that. There's always going to be ups. There's always going to be downs. In almost every scene you write, somebody is moving up or somebody is moving down. And in those ups and downs is going to be the conflicts that you're looking for. And those conflicts and the dynamics, will she, won't she, will he, won't he, will they, won't they, no matter what the situation is going to be revealed in each one of those sections or chapters, or however you want to divide something up. And you kind of map that out. And then I would also say that within a scene itself, you're going to have elements of the A, B, C, D section. And so when I start to write a scene, I start, how can I enter this scene with something already, you're seeing the theme now, something already happening. Okay. And then almost maybe immediately, or maybe a little bit into the scene, after we've established the scene, something happens that's an inciting incident, maybe a conflict or something that's going to send that scene or that segment into a new direction. And then we've got them dealing with it. And then maybe the scene stops right there on a cliffhanger, and we pick up with the rest of that B and C, or whatever progression of that story, in other scenes as it's going along. And this is something that I learned from live television and broadcast television. Back in the days when I started, we had to deal with commercials, and now commercials are starting to come back. Streaming was just straight through. Now in certain platforms, they're starting to add commercials again. So I'm glad that today's newer filmmakers are going to have to experience the same trauma that I did, that you have to be fearful of those commercials, those breaks. So you always end a sequence or a scene or a chapter, whatever it happens to be, with a cliffhanger of some degree, because in the old days, at that point, they went to the kitchen to get something and they might not come back, and you had to have them coming back.
It's true.
And so you always purposely put some sort of dun, dun, dun at the end of each one of those segment, sequence, or scenes or chapters in order to be able to have everybody come back.
Wow. Wow, there's a lot there, Clay. Thank you so much for imparting all this wisdom and information, and you can hear the passion in your voice when you start talking about structure and about the symphony of creating a story. It's there, and I really, we're so honored to have you here as a speaker.
I'm honored that you guys invited me. You always feel good when you were invited before and you get invited back. And so that's like, what a delight. Okay.
Well, great. Then we'll invite you again for next year, and maybe you could talk on character development. I could tell at the end you really wanted to.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, perfect. Perfect. Does anyone have any last comments or questions for Clay? Other than he's wonderful? Anybody want to let's give him a round of applause.
And
I have one.
I was going to say thank you all again. I know there's lots of things that you could do on your Saturday other than be here, and so it's I appreciate you guys showing up. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. We just have a couple of other quick announcements, and then we'll call it a day and adjourn to Emilio's for lunch. If you were here, Clay, this may be worth you flying out next year.
Okay.
We take you to a fabulous Mexican restaurant for lunch if you were physically here.
Nice. Well, maybe we could work that in advance and I could be physically there.
You never know. We'll talk about it. One quick announcement that got missed earlier, and it's actually from Stacia, one of our members, but she's at an event today and she's at a table and she's not sure she can unmute. I don't even know if she's still on Zoom. She might have had to go.
I'm here. Can you see me?
Okay. Yes. Hi, Stacia Joyce. And I don't know if you know Clay, if you guys have ever met, but anyway.
Not yet, but we have a
Whatever.
lot to talk about.
Okay, great.
Okay, go ahead and make your announcement, Stacia.
I work for a lot of doctors. I do a lot of I write mysteries, but for little people.
Oh, that's nice.
I'm well in the children's marketplace. We will connect. Hey, real quick, just a quick announcement. I'm standing at Temecula's DigiFest, which is a film program and something for this weekend. But that is not why I asked to have 2 seconds here at the end. Tomorrow, for the Temecula Valley Writers and Illustrators, which is a new group, education and networking for writers and artists and soon filmmakers and screenwriters and poets and everyone in the Temecula Valley. We have Jonathan Mayberry coming. He's a New York Times bestselling writer of thriller and horror and has vast tentacles in comic books, production, editing, anthology, you name it. He's like the Clay of the West Coast. So if you have time tomorrow, 11 to 1 at Temecula's City Hall, we have Jonathan speaking. And then we do breakout groups to kind of get some time to talk amongst ourselves and learn a little bit from each other. So I just wanted a quick announcement. Thank you very, very much for the session today. I found it incredibly enjoyable and educational. So thanks.
Good. Thank you.
Thank you, Stacia. Very much appreciate it. And I will be there, as you know, tomorrow. Stacia is just, she and another writer started that organization in Temecula. They don't have a Zoom presence, Clay, unfortunately, or else she'd be trying to snag you for one of their meetings. But they're a great group. If you can go down to Temecula tomorrow, see me after the meeting, talk to me, and I'll give you directions. It's really easy to find. One last thing, that would be the announcement for next month's speaker. Lynette, do you want to take that away?
Yeah. Okay, so next month we are going to have Allison Adams. Can you guys hear me okay? I took my headset off, but my voice is kind of leaving.
You're
okay.
fine. You're fine.
Okay, good. She does some writers retreats. She's going to be doing a segment called How to Find the Juice. And it says, we all have stories to tell. So many ideas in so little time. What project excites you and why? With a series of quick exercises, we're all going to discover the creative spark that brings your story to life. Allison Adams is an award-winning screenwriter, director, costume designer, who made her acting debut at 2 years old, playing opposite Elizabeth Montgomery. She's had over 30 plays produced, and her most recent musical, Howl, played to sold-out audiences. She wrote, directed, and acted in Montana PBS's documentary called Peace is a Woman's Job about First Congressman Jeanette Rankins, and she toured with a one-woman show for a decade. She's also published The Rebel and the King, which was written by her late father, actor Nick Adams, about his friendship with Elvis Presley. Allison is a pretty exciting person. Just in general, she owns a old-time photography studio up here in Montana, and she works with writers and with college students, and I'm really excited to see how she's going to help us work through juicing up our own stories. So that'll be next month, May 18th.
Yes. Okay. Thank you, Lynette. And again, once again, Clay, thank you for coming. Thank you, everybody on Zoom and live. We will now adjourn and go to lunch.
Have fun, guys.
Thank you.